Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are having a good day. I hope that you enjoyed your break. I have a couple of announcements. But first, let me close my web browser. Done, done, and then do one last thing. Oh, nope, not that. And then I will be ready to go. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to announce was that you guys have the module for oxidation reduction. That is due on Thursday, this upcoming Thursday, the 4th at 11:59 p.m. So I will grab a slide deck so I can write that out. Slide one, good. Share my screen. The next item, okay, so stylus, pen. So, um, oxidation module due Thursday, 11 or 12/4 at 11:59 p.m. Now the due or the completion part of this is the quizzes. Those are the things that are graded. There are some things known as H5Ps, and those are the things that are like fill in the blank sort of things. Um, those are not something that is being graded. Instead, those are kind of built-in activities to maybe help you look at the material in a different way. Um, the quizzes are really just homework assignments. I made an adjustment. There's, I believe, four of them, and you have three attempts at each. Um, I was notified yesterday that the last two, they only had one attempt each, so I've adjusted that so you have three attempts at each of them. Okay, so that's the first announcement. The second announcement is your final exam. Now, I'm going to open a web browser and share my screen just to give you guys this resource. I'll also add it to the chat. Um, the final exam schedule. I know that you guys have lots of classes that are going on. So it's probably helpful to have a good resource for yourself. And of course, you've got your syllabi that you can look at. And you can always ask your professors. But this link right here that I'm adding to the chat, that's a persistent link, so that one will never change. I'm going to switch my share so that you guys can see the same thing that I'm doing. So on this Office of the Registrar, if you scroll down to fall 2025, you'll see this grid that shows the final exams. And the way that it's initially organized is starting on the first day of final exams. The first day of final exams is the 5th, but not until 12:30 p.m. Thursday the 4th is our last day of classes. There are some exams that are held on Saturday. Our ha sorry, our final exam, however, is based on when our class meets. Our class meets 9:30 to 10:50. So that means, so that's our class meeting day, class meeting time. Then our final exam date is Tuesday, December 9th from 8 a.m. till 10:30 a.m. Now, what I'm going to do is just open that exam. So I'll switch back over so I can write this out because that's the important thing for you guys is to see the actual exam date and time. So our final exam is going to be whoop, 1 week from today, Tuesday, the 9th or just that, from, I'm going to open it at 7:30 a.m. and it's going to close at 8 p.m. So that's the window in which you can take the exam. The exam is going to be 2 times as long as our regular exams. So what that means is it's going to have 80 questions, and you're going to get 2 hours for it. Could everyone give me a 7 in the chat if you understand that? Awesome. So I got a private message. Any bonus points or curve? I think I will probably have some bonus points. The way that I usually, so I mentioned this previously in the semester, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. I'll review some of these details on Thursday at the end of our class period. But the way that I set up grades, I don't adjust or I do not give a curve on a final exam. So let's say what I mean by that is, and this has never happened, but let's say the highest score of everyone who takes the final, the highest score is a 90. What some professors do is they take that and they say, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to add 10 points to everyone's score. I don't do that. Now, that's not because I'm a grouch, or I don't think that's because I'm a grouch. Many other things about me are because I'm a grouch, but that's not one of them. Um, if the highest score is a 90, the highest score is a 90. What I'm going to do is I'm going to list the scores from the highest average all the way to the lowest average. Now, in this case, let's say that the highest overall average, could everyone give me an 8 in the chat if they understand that the highest average is taking all of the grades that you've collected over the semester? Okay. So if the highest average, let's say that, and this is again unlikely to happen, let's say that the highest average was an 88. Or actually, let's say it's a, sorry, my phone is going crazy. Let's say that the highest average is a 95 and the lowest average is a 55. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up A's and B's as 89.5 and above is an A. So I'll look at this 95 and I'll be like, okay, well, approximately that means I need to kind of deploy like a 5 point curve. I'm not going to go with a hard line of 5 points, but I'm going to look at this 89.5 and I'm going to be like, well, the lowest A is probably closer to like an 86 or so. Could everyone give me a 3 in the chat if they understand that I'm kind of ignoring the 89.5 or adjusting the 89.5 to like an 86? Okay. So I'm happy to see that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and erase this and move these numbers. Now, again, I've got the highest grades ranked all the way to the lowest grades. And I've got this new kind of number of an 86. I'm just thinking about that. Let's say that whenever I've listed all the grades out, I see there's an someone who got an 86.5. I'd look at that and I'd be like, okay, that's an A. 86, or actually, yeah, I'm going to say 85.5 because rounding, of course. Let's say there's an 86.0, 85.7, 85.3, 85.2, 85.1. Well, if I have this idea that this 85.5 is my kind of split for anything above this is an is an A, and anything below this is a B, then give me a 1 in the chat if you follow that these scores and above are like slam dunk A's. Okay. Now, so to answer the question earlier of if I have use a curve, I don't use it on the final exam, but I do kind of use it whenever I'm looking at the final grades. Now, another way that I try to be subjective and supportive of students is if you're the person who got this 85.5, or if you're this person who got an 85.3, um, there's a part of you that's like, well, that stinks, man. And honestly, I kind of look at it and I think, well, this person, did they perform pretty darn well compared to this 85.7? Yeah. Did they perform well compared to that breakpoint average? They did. Would there be like, what are the chances that they there was one minor thing that they missed over the course of the semester, and oh, if they had just done that, that would have been an A. Well, then I'm taking that into account, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, this 85.3, that's an A. Does everyone follow that? Give me a 5 in the chat if you follow that. So I'm kind of a little bit more generous with my rounding. I got a private message question. Can we still use a note card with notes? Yes, you can use one 3x5 note card on the final exam. I just realized can I take the final early? I think that I can accommodate that. If you need to take the final early, send me an email. We can start a conversation. We can figure out how that works out. And for the person who sent that message, can you confirm? Yes, I will do that. Cool. Okay. So again, this 85.3, that's going to be an A. The 85.2 and the 85.1, man, those are super close. Ooh. If the 85.3 was basically like one minor thing away from being an A, what about the 85.2 and 1? Well, those two, I'm going to group those as my A's as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this 85.5 and I'm going to say, okay, where is the next lowest grade, or where is my next lowest grade that's not super close? So let's say I've got these ranked out, the 85.3, 85.2, 85.1. Then my next highest grade is an 84.5. Okay. Could somebody tell me what's the difference between the 85.3 and the 85.2? Point one. 85.2 and 85.1. What's the difference between those? Okay. Yeah, those are super close, both of those. Now, could anyone tell me what's the difference between an 85.1 and 84.5? 0.6. Now, that is where I'm going to look at the numbers and I'm just going to be like, those grades are so close that I'm drawing the line here. So, could everyone tell me in the chat what letter grade would the person who got the 84.5 average get in the class? They're ending up with a B. That's correct. Now, excuse my language. I don't like to say this word, part because I try to make make sure my kids don't say it. But if you're the person who got the 85.4 or 84.5, sorry, if you're the person who ended up with this average, you're probably going to think, well, that sucks. I got the highest B? Ugh, that's like the best silver medal. Nobody wants the best silver medal. You want the gold medal. But this is the way that the numbers are going. That's the way that I approach the numbers. And at the same time, part of the argument that I would make is I kind of look at the 84.5 and I'm like, in all other, like you're close to how the class performed, um, but I've got to draw the line somewhere. And this is where I've elected to draw it based on consistent performance. The person who got the 84.5 kind of consistently performed at a lower level than an 85.1. Are they close? Yes, they are. But that's just how it shakes out. Could everyone give me a 9 in the chat if you follow? And then I've got a direct message question I'm going to answer. Okay. So I just got a private message question. Will there be a practice exam for the final? And the answer to that is yes. And what we're going to do today is kind of work through this. So what I've got for today's review is I've got a total of 30 multiple choice poll questions. And it's not going to be like or actually any other questions that you might have between now and the final exam. If you can remember them and bring them to class on Thursday, that would be fantastic. If you can't, you can send me an email. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. The final is mandatory. Yes, it is. I'll send that out as a kind of a reminder announcement for everyone as well. Thank you very much for mentioning that. Um, I'm writing a note, mandatory announcement. So in short, if several students have grades close to 85.5, then grades close to that and deserving of the grade A or of the grade get the A. Am I assuming that correctly? Yes. Now, the person who sent me that private message question, I just want to qualify and clarify that the 85.5 is like a hypothetical number. Do you understand that the 85.5 is just pretty hypothetical? Okay. This hypothetical is based on the highest grade in the class being a 95. I don't expect that to happen. Another question. I don't see my exam 3 grade posted. Do you have those, or does it factor into my current overall grade? I will be posting those a little bit later today and releasing the questions. So the current grade calculation you have, I do not believe that includes exam 3 or exam 3 replacing exam 2. Not to keep you answering questions and not doing the review, but when we'll test grade 3 be in and replace exam 2. That'll be a little bit later this afternoon. I'm hoping before 3 p.m. So hopefully for those of you who did not do as well on exam 2 as you wanted or anticipated, if you did better on exam 3, that should be replacing it today. So you should see a significant change in your grade. And any questions that you have, if I can answer them now, fantastic. But if not, if you can remember it a little bit later, jot it down, shoot me an email. I'll get to it on Thursday. Okay, so the way that we're going to break this class, or break the review down, I got a direct message question. Is the test optional? The final exam is not optional. It is mandatory. It is worth, I think, 15% of your overall grade. I can't remember. I think it's 15. It might be 20. I'd have to look back at the syllabus, which I don't have open at this moment. Okay. And keep questions coming. I know it says on the screen, but that's the final exam time for the class. I just want to get the date and time right. Yes. Sorry, I'm going to go back. Tuesday the 9th, starting at 7:30, closing at 8 p.m. That's your big window when you can take the exam. You will have 2 hours to do that. Personal question when we end class. Okay, I'll be ready for that. Wait, you said test three isn't graded or hasn't replaced test two yet. That is correct. Well, you said or, but it's both. I have not adjusted the grade book to reflect that yet. I apologize for my delay on that. Okay. So for the final exam, if you start at 7:30, then you have to be, or the exam will close for you at 9:30 in the morning. Um, if you start at 2 p.m., then the exam will close at 4 p.m. If you have time accommodations for, time and a half, then you'll have 3 hours for the exam. All right. So for the final exam, what we are going to do to review for the final exam is I'm going to throw some poll questions up, and I want you to work through them, and then I'll talk about each one of these questions. I've got a total of 30 of them. It is almost 9:50, so we have a little bit more, less than an hour. Um, I think we'll be able to move through some of them pretty quickly. Others might take a little bit longer. In the meantime, though, I'm going to pop up questions 1 through 5. And if you have questions, just let me know. So everyone should see your poll questions now, 1 through 5. The first question reads, which of the following is a physical property? Flammability, ability to rust, density, fermentation. Second question is, which observation indicates chemical change has occurred? Third, which term describes the ability of a metal to be hammered into thin sheets? Which of the following is not a chemical property? It's question 4 and question 5. When a piece of aluminum is cut in half, the change is. And all of these just have one correct answer. We've got 66 people here. I'm going to wait until hopefully we can get 50 responses. We're at 34. This will be on YouTube, right? Yes. This is being recorded. I'll post it on our YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. Okay, we're at 52 responses. Cut. Okay. Give another 10 seconds, then I'm going to end the poll. Here we go. End poll. Okay, I'm going to share the results. The first question reads, which of the following is a physical property? Okay, flammability, ability to rust, fermentation, density. The correct answer is density. Density is a physical property. A fair question or a fair point to bring up about the first two. Okay, flammability. Now, whenever I think of the term flammability, I think of like gasoline. And importantly, when it comes to flammability, that means the substance can ignite. So it's not that it's transitioning from a liquid to a gas. Instead, that thing can actually start on fire. So give me a one if water is flammable. Nobody's given a one in there because water is not flammable. Um, Gasoline, by comparison, gasoline is highly flammable. That's a chemical property. So flammability is the ability of something to actually ignite or combust. So that's a chemical property. Ability to rust. So rusting is something like iron, Fe, that goes to FeO2, iron oxide, or FeO. So that is something that is iron. Could anyone tell me, now this is moving forward, thinking forward a little bit, could anyone tell me what the charge, add to the chat, what's the charge of Fe right here? I've got FeS. What's the charge of iron? Perfect, it's zero. Okay. Now, if we look at this compound, FeO, well, FeO, that whole compound has a charge of zero. Does everyone agree with that? Give me a Y in the chat if you agree with that statement. Okay. Now, FeO is a compound, has a charge of zero. We know that oxygen has a charge of -2. What is the charge of iron then? +2. So this thing right here, Fe, solid, when it becomes a part of FeO, well, it's at the atomic level, Fe has undergone a change. It's lost electrons. So that's a chemical change. So if something happens at the atomic level, that's a chemical change. Um, Now looking at question number two, which observation indicates a chemical change has occurred? Ice melting, salt dissolving. Well, ice melting, that's a state change. Ice to water, or ice to liquid, I'll just say. That's a state change. So that is an example of a physical property. The physical state has changed. Salt dissolving. Well, NaCl, that's an ionic compound. Na positive to Cl minus, well, that will dissolve into Na plus and Cl minus. So nothing about either of these ions has changed at the atomic level. So therefore, it's no chemical change. Number three, which term describes the ability of a metal to be hammered into thin sheets? So is there any compound or any substance that you can think about that is a metal that can be hammered into thin sheets, or maybe not necessarily thin sheets, but something that can be kind of flattened out pretty easily, or a metal that's kind of soft enough to undergo that sort of pressurized change? What I always think about in that case, and I know that I asked a question, I got copper. Perfect. Copper wiring. You can take a block of copper and make lots of copper wiring for electrical wiring within a house. I always think about gold and the word malleability. So malleability, so it is malleable, it's bendable. If something's bendable, then it's flattenable. Okay, next up is which of the following is not a chemical property? Okay, if something burns, that's again kind of something igniting. Like a block of wood starts on fire. That block of wood has a chemical composition, and whenever it burns into ash, it's going to have a different chemical composition. If something decomposes, that's a good word to always think about as, okay, it's broken down chemically. If something explodes, again, it's kind of this ignition. There's like a flame that's brought into the equation that blows something up and produces a different substance. Freezes at 5K. Could anyone tell me in the chat what does that K stand for? Kelvin, perfect. In addition to that, something freezing, that's a physical state change. Now, number five, when a piece of aluminum is cut in half, it's a physical change. The identity remains the exact same. It's a piece of aluminum. Now it's two pieces of aluminum. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to go on to the next few questions, questions 6 through 10. I You know what? For the sake of organization, I'm going to use the numbering that's on the uh that's on the polls that you see. One, two. So we can avoid confusion there. I got a private message question. The final is going to be online, correct? Yes, it is. Absolutely. Okay, we're at 25 responses, 65 people. I'm going to still aim for about 50 responses, so I'll give you another minute or so. So far, the responses I'm seeing are overall pretty darn good, trending in the right direction. Got 40 responses. Give another 10 seconds. In the poll, and I'm going to share the results. Now, one thing that I noticed is for all of these, the most popular answer is the correct answer. I'll say that. Now, the next thing that I'd like to say is we've done um, a total of 10 questions, and the time that I allocated was like 4 minutes for the first group of questions, and then um, just under 3 minutes for the next few questions. That's about 7 minutes to do 10 questions. So I want you to think about that and try to like simulate your testing experience and say, okay, well, how long should it take me to answer these questions? Should it take me 2 hours to answer the first 10 questions? Probably not. Um, how long should it take me? Just to kind of like give yourself, I don't know, just give yourself like confidence of like, hey, the more time, like I'm personally the sort of person that if I give myself a lot of time, I can use that whole time. I'm not necessarily going to get better. I'm kind of a first response is the right response more than half the time. So if I've got 10 questions left and I'm just like, okay, I've got 10 questions. I've got 3 hours to do them. I might as well just knock them out in 10 minutes. Okay, but anyway, the first one, which is a pure substance? Salt water, sand, or carbon dioxide? The correct answer, or air. The correct answer is CO2. Think about salt water. Well, that's NaCl and H2O. So those are two different compounds. The next one is sand. Well, if you go to the beach, think about the sand in Galveston Beach. Is there NaCl there? Yes, absolutely. Is there limestone? Absolutely. So there's other substances there. Air, if you go outside, you've got O2, you've got carbon dioxide, you've got N2, you've got lots of different compounds. So carbon dioxide is the correct answer because it's only one specific substance. Which of the following is an element? Now, I noticed that the first person who responded selected A or the first response for every question. And in a not surprising fashion, that didn't lead them to the right answer. I noticed that they did that just because there was one submission within 10 seconds, and then the next submission took another, 45 seconds. Which of the following is an element? The correct answer here is CO. Capital letter followed by a lowercase letter. CO, where it's two capital letters, that's carbon monoxide. So NO, nitrogen monoxide. NaCl, sodium chloride. Those are two elements or two substances making up a compound. A mixture that is uniform throughout is called heterogeneous. A compound, homogeneous or elemental. Uniform throughout. That's the same throughout. Think about like if you've ever heard of the industrial process of homogenization. That's trying to make a food or a, I don't know, any number of different things the same throughout. Okay, what day is our final? Tuesday the 9th, 7:30 till 8 p.m. You have 2 hours. So whenever you elect to take the exam, within that 7:30 to 8 p.m. window, 2 hours starts, and there you go. But Tuesday the 9th. Okay, so number three, homogeneous. O2 is classified as an element, a compound, a mixture, a metal. Well, nobody answered metal. Good. A mixture. Ooh, tricky. A compound. Okay, well, um, O2 is considered an element. Remember your diatomic gases. We talked about these later on, but that's where we talked about H, bron, cliff. H2, Br2, O2, N2, Cl2, I2, F2. These are all kind of the unique ones that stand out. Now, the second most popular answer here was compound. In a compound, you have two different elements. A mixture, you have multiple different substances. So a mixture would be O2 and CO2 making up a mixture, or O2 and NaCl. Is this the practice, or will be there is something on Canvas we can practice also, and we know that there will be additional practice questions on the Canvas page later today, or no later than tomorrow afternoon. Which of the following is not a molecule? O2, CO2, AR, H2O. 76% of the class answered AR is the correct answer. That is the one thing that kind of stands alone. Okay, so now, oh, why AR? Is that the question? I got a private message. Okay, so when we talk about a molecule is two or more atoms. So, and whenever I say atoms, I also mean atoms slash elements. So if we said NaCl, that would be a molecule. O2, sorry about that. O2, that would be a molecule. Now, NaCl, it's a molecule and a compound. It's a compound because it's two or more different things. So O2 is a molecule. So if we look at the answer options, O2 is the first answer option. O2 is a molecule, but it's not a compound. CO2 is, and I'll share the results again so you can see the different answer options. CO2 is both a molecule and a compound. H2O is a molecule and a compound. AR is simply an element or an atom. Does that make sense for the person who asked? Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our next questions. Those questions, now we've got a couple more, but these all relate to numbers. Convert 0.0034 grams or kilograms to grams. Scientific notation for this number, 5600000. What does the prefix 10 to the minus third mean? A liquid has a mass of 32 grams at a volume of 42 milliliters. What is its density? If an object floats in water, its density must be. How many seconds are in 4.5 minutes? And what is 0.00092 written in scientific notation? And which measurement is the smallest? 3 grams. I'm not sure if it's the same person, but one person did respond within the first 20 seconds, and they didn't go with straight. It doesn't look like they went with A across the board. But now I'm seeing some more responses pepper in. So I'm going to go ahead and write these out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did I say 7 or 8 questions? 8. Okay. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and start working on some of these. Um, 0.0000034 kilograms. 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. Okay. We got 26 responses. Again, there's no like consequence to this. If there's one that you're like, I'm hung up on this, just throw something in and let's go. At this point, the most popular answer is the correct one for every question on here. So that's pretty awesome. I'll give another 15 seconds. It's not going to get to 50, but that's okay. 5 seconds. Then I'm going to display the results. And here we go. Okay, so the first question is convert 0.0034 kilograms to grams. In order to answer this question, you've got to know that 1 kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. So I've set up this kind of um, system for how to do this sort of calculation. You don't have to use that setup that I have. You could just show a ratio. 1,000 grams is equal to 1 kilogram. So you take 0.0034, multiply it by 1,000, you're going to end up with 3.4 grams. I did the questions, but you closed it right as I was clicking submit. Okay, we'll get them next time. Um, Next one is scientific notation for 5.6 million or 5,600,000. Well, that's going to be you're moving the decimal 6 places. You're going to end up with a positive exponent. We know that we're moving it 6 places because scientific notation wants us to have one number to the left of the decimal and then one non-zero digit to the left of the decimal and then one non-zero digit, anything else to the right of the decimal. So I'm going to end up with 5.6 times 10 to the positive sixth. Now, the next question is really kind of tricky because it's bringing in multiple things. It's bringing in scientific notation, but it's also bringing in this prefix. So what prefix? If we have 10 to the minus third, essentially what this is asking us is it's asking us, okay, if we've got a base unit, let's say a base unit for measurement, 1 meter. Now, what I always like to do is, or the way that I like to answer this sort of question is I like to think, okay, 1 meter is my base unit. What is 0.1 meters? Well, that would be a centimeter. Now, this is the same as 10 to the minus first. Now, what this question is asking, okay, so before I proceed, could you give me a V in the chat if you follow this kind of progression? The letter V as, okay. So what this question is asking is we've got 10 to the minus third. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in this blank right here so that then I can fill in that blank. 10 to the minus third, that means I've got 0.001 M. Does everyone see that? If you do put an R in the chat, I've converted this 10 to the minus third, and I'm just using M for meters as like a throw-in value. Instead of meters, it could be liters. Could you give me an R in the chat if you follow this? Okay. Isn't a centimeter 0.001 meters? Point 1 centimeters. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Sorry, you're absolutely correct. Wouldn't be a centimeter. What would that be? 0.0. Is that decameter, I think? Yeah, 0.1 meter. Sorry, it's not centimeters. I think it's decameter. Decameter is a unit that we don't really use very much, and it's not really relatable. Like we don't have, sorry, but somebody sent me a private message and corrected me. It's not centimeter. Okay, but for this example, 10 to the minus third, 0.001 liters. This right here would be 1/1000th of a liter, which is the same as 1 milliliter. The most popular answer there was milli, so that was correct. Um, Kilo is larger, so kilo would be 10 to the third. Nano would be 10 to the minus sixth, I think. What you should expect for this sort of question would be something a little bit more, I guess, deliberate. Okay, now question number 4. A liquid has a density of 32 grams and a volume of 40 milliliters. Density is grams per milliliter, so we're just going to do 32 divided by 40, and that's going to be 0.8 grams per mole, or grams per milliliter, sorry. Question 5, if an object floats in water, its density. Okay, so for this question, you have to know that the density of water is 1 gram per milliliter. If something floats in water, well, its density is going to be less than water. Think about if you had something that was exactly 1 gram per milliliter, and you've got, let's see, here's a glass of water, and you've got an object right here that's 1 gram per milliliter. Dropped it in here. That object might end up here, might end up right here, because it's going to mix in with its substances of equal densities. So it's not going to sink to the bottom because it's not more dense than water. It's not going to float to the top because it's not less than the density of water. Number 6, how many seconds are there in 4.5 minutes? 4.5 minutes. There's 60 seconds in a minute. So 4.5 times 60 is going to be 270. That's the correct answer. Number 7, what is 0.00092 written in scientific notation? What we're going to do is move the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. So 9.2 times 10 to the minus fourth. That's our correct answer. Number 8, which measurement is the smallest? All that we have there are the units. We've got grams, milligrams, micrograms, and kilograms. The correct answer is micrograms. I think that this is a really good question for specific units to and symbols for different units to be familiar with. Okay, now we'll go on to our next block of questions, 19 through 22. Okay, we're making good time. And I want you to kind of recognize, oh, someone was done in 5 seconds. Um, and we'll see how correct those are. Sorry, got like a sinus infection. I think, I don't know. I want you to recognize how we're kind of progressing through the content of the semester. So on Thursday, we'll catch the second half of the material for the class. Here we've got what particle determines the identity of an element? An atom with 6 protons and 8 neutrons has a mass number of. A neutral atom's sulfur has how many electrons? Which of the following best describes an isotope? Is our question number 4. And I'm going to get a periodic table. Okay. This is pretty much the same periodic table that you'll see on the exam. Again, I'm just throwing the link for the final exam schedule if you want to look up your other classes. And I'm going to switch my share so you guys can look at the periodic table to answer some of these questions if you need. Give another minute or so. Okay, I'm going to stop the poll right now, and I'm going to switch my share the results. Question number 1, which particle determines the identity of an element? Well, the correct answer is proton, and the vast majority of the class got that correct. I always like to use a good reference element. The element that I always like to pick is lithium, again, because it's a great Nirvana song, but also it's a simple element. 3 protons, approximately 4 neutrons for the most common isotope. So my 3 is going to dictate what that element's identity is. So P for protons is the first question. Next up is an atom with 6 protons and 8 neutrons has a mass number of, okay, so 6 protons. So 6 protons and 8 neutrons has a mass number of, oh, and you might look at that and say, okay, well, 6 protons for carbon. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the answer is 12. But that's not correct. Are you looking at carbon? You are. You are looking at carbon. But where you have, sorry, but what you need to think about is, well, where is our mass number? What is that coming from? Our mass number is coming from protons plus neutrons. And so for this question, number 2, did you have to know the identity of the element? No, you don't. We got 2 private messages. One, do we get a note card on the final? I'm sure you've answered this. Yes, you do get to use a note card, the same size as the one you've used over the course of the semester. You don't need to send me your answers, but good. It looks like you got them all correct, the person who did. A neutral atom of sulfur has how many electrons? Well, that is going to be one where you look at the periodic table. You'll see sulfur has 16 protons, 16 positive charges. If it's neutral, it's going to have 16 electrons. Quick question, since the final exam on Tuesday, will we still have class next week on Thursday? We do not have class after the final exam. I'll be available if there's anything that you need to discuss with me or anything like that, but no. Next up is which of the following best describes an isotope? Okay, so an isotope is the same number of protons, different number of neutrons. So different isotopes, I'll write this on our slide. Different isotopes have different mass numbers. Okay, now we're going to go on to does anyone have any questions about any of these questions? Give me a 7 in the chat if you're good. Great. Okay. Then we've got 2 more little blocks. Soft 7. Okay, respect. We've got this. Yeah, great. We're doing good on time. How many valence electrons does nitrogen have? I'm going to go ahead and share the periodic table that I just had in a web browser. Did I close that? I didn't. There we go. I'm also going to throw into the chat a link for the periodic table. ptable.com is a good one. How many valence electrons does nitrogen have? What ion is formed when magnesium reacts? Which atom is most likely to form a -1 ion? The Lewis dot symbol for Br minus should show how many dots? Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead. Yep. We'll give you another 30 seconds or so. I apologize for the coughing. About 15 more seconds. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, share the results. If you didn't submit your answers, don't worry about it. I'm not going to toggle over to the blank slide for just a little bit. Valence electrons. Well, we got to find nitrogen. Nitrogen's right here. Nitrogen is in group 15. This is also known as group 5. As 14 is also known as 4. 13 is known as 3, 6, 7, and 8. Every element wants to get to 8 valence electrons. Nitrogen currently rolls in with 5 valence electrons. Popular answer was the correct answer. What ion is formed when magnesium reacts? Okay, so magnesium is a metal. It's on the far left-hand side of the periodic table. It's in group 2. So magnesium likes to form a +2 ion. So whenever it reacts, it's going to lose 2 electrons. Now that brings up the stuff later that we'll talk about at the end of class tomorrow, and that is oxidation reduction. So Mg, solid magnesium, it goes on to form Mg2+, Aq plus 2 electrons. Now, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to kind of bring this back. Does this show that magnesium solid, is it getting oxidized or is it getting reduced? Add to the chat O for oxidized or R for reduced. Spot on. It is getting oxidized. It loses electrons to form that Mg2+ ion. If that's something that you're still mixed up on, we'll talk about it a little bit more in class on Thursday, or just let me know and I'd be glad to meet and discuss with you. Or we can do it after class. Which atom is most likely to form a -1 ion? Well, what that means is that we want an atom that will gain 1 electron. All of these guys in row 17 or group 7 will gain 1 electron. We've got sodium, which is right, make my pen a little bolder. Sodium is right here. Nope, that's out. It's a metal. It likes to get oxidized and lose an electron. Calcium is right here. Well, that likes to lose 2 electrons. Aluminum is right here. It likes to lose 3 electrons. Chlorine is the only one that is a non-metal that likes to gain 1 electron. The last question is the Lewis dot symbol for Br minus should show how many dots. Okay. The 2 most popular answers are the ones that are closest. The most popular answer is actually incorrect in this one. Everyone said 7. I'm guessing the reason that you said 7 was because you said, okay, well, bromine right here, group 7, Br. I'm going to do my Lewis structure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Give me a Y in the chat if you agree with this as the Lewis dot symbol for bromine. If you're like, okay, yeah, I follow that. That's how I started it. Well, I think that's a good approach. That's a good thought to have. But we're not talking about Br. We're talking about Br minus. Do these two, Br and Br minus, do they have the same number of electrons? Y or N to the chat. They don't. Br minus has one additional electron. So when we do that, it's sometimes helpful to use a different color to show that kind of new electron, that eighth electron. Okay, if anyone got number 4 incorrect, but now understands how to answer this question, could you give me a K in the chat? And give me any other letter if, wait, I'm still confused. So what we want to do whenever we're drawing a Lewis symbol is account for the number of valence electrons. And then think about, am I drawing an atom or am I drawing an ion? Oxygen. Oxygen, an atom, a neutral atom of oxygen has 6 valence electrons. So we draw that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, oxygen likes to form O2 minus. What I just circled, is that O2 minus? Give me a Y or N to the chat. Is that O2 minus? It's not. That is an oxygen atom with 6 valence electrons. If I wanted to draw O2 minus, that means I've got to account for, well, 2 more electrons. The minus reflects the charges of the electrons. How many electrons do we have that we're adding? 2. 1, 2. So this right here is O2 minus. Okay. Now we are on to our last block of questions. That last block of questions, 27 through 30, and this has to do with nomenclature. What is the correct formula for calcium chloride? I'm going to clear all this marking on the screen, but I'm going to leave the periodic table up so that you guys can use that as a reference. Calcium chloride, correct name for CuO, formula for sodium oxide, ionic compound. Give you another minute on this. About 35 more seconds. Okay. 10 seconds. Will we be doing more review for the final exam? Will we be doing more final exam review on Thursday? Yes, we will. Think about it as Thursday is going to be basically the same thing, but with the more content, the second half of the class's content. So this stuff is lots of first half of the semester. Okay, I'm going to end the poll there. And what I'm seeing right now is I think that the most popular answer for every question is the correct answer. So calcium chloride, in order to answer this question, we got to find calcium. Calcium's right here. I'm going to erase that. I'm going to go with a different pen. Go with yellow. No, probably shouldn't do yellow on yellow. Go with red. Calcium. Calcium likes to form a Ca2+. So when it reacts with something to form a compound, it's going to bring in a +2 charge. Chlorine forms chloride, Cl-. When you have Ca and Cl, well, you're going to need CaCl2. You're going to need two of these negative charges to make a neutral compound. So CaCl2 is correct. What is the correct name for CuO? Okay, so copper is right here. Copper is a transition metal. It's a metal, but copper and other transition metals can have lots of different charges. Now, do we need to know that for this? It's helpful, but most importantly, we know that oxygen likes to form an ion with what charge? Could anyone add the charge that oxygen likes to form? The oxide ion, the common ion that oxygen likes to form? Oxide? Well, think about where it is. Does oxygen like to gain 1 or 2 electrons to get to 8? 2. Absolutely. So O2 minus. Now, CuO, well, oxide is 2 minus, therefore this is 2 minus. Then what is copper? Well, copper has to be 2 plus in order for this whole thing to be neutral. Now, with that in mind, we've got a couple of different answer options. You could say copper oxide, copper 1 oxide, copper 2 oxide, or monocopper monoxide. Okay, you never use the prefixes like mono when you're talking about an ionic compound, which when you have a metal and a non-metal, that is an ionic compound. Now, this copper oxide, well, that's incorrect because it doesn't provide enough information because your transition metals can have different charges. So that eliminates copper oxide as an answer. So now we're down to copper 1 or copper 2. Okay. The number that's the Roman numeral indicates a charge. If there's a 1 Roman numeral, that means +1. If there's a 2 Roman numeral, that means +2. So our correct answer is copper 2 oxide. Our last question, or no, not our last. What is the formula for sodium oxide? The correct answer? Well, sodium is +1. Oxide is -2, so Na +1 and O2 minus. So Na, you've got 2 of them. Oh. Last one. Which substance below represents an ionic compound? CO2, carbon and oxygen, both nonmetals. Hydrogen and oxygen. Well, hydrogen's kind of it's a nonmetal, even though it's on the far left-hand side of the periodic table. NH3, NH3, 2 nonmetals. NaCl, NaCl. Na is a metal, Cl is a nonmetal, so there's your ionic compound. Okay, I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to go ahead and say thank you guys very much. I hope this was helpful. I know some of this stuff was a little bit older. And then I will see you guys on Thursday. I'll be posting some review content hopefully before the middle of the afternoon tomorrow. And then if anything comes up, I've got office hours starting in about 15 minutes. There was one person who said they had a private question that they'd like to ask. And you're more than welcome to hang around. Other than that, though, I'll see you guys on Thursday in the morning. And thank you very much for coming and your participation. I think everyone's doing pretty well in terms of like covering the material. Like the most popular answer was pretty much always right. So I will see you guys on Thursday. Thanks for coming, everyone.